He walked into the restaurant dressed in gray, calm, unnoticed. Within minutes, the manager mistook him for a late waiter and ordered him to serve water. When he politely asked for his reserved table, she laughed. "Sir, this place isn't for people like you." No one defended him, until he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a card, black, gold embossed. Then everything changed. What happens when the most powerful man in the room is the one everyone ignored? Stay until the end, because this story will flip your sense of justice on its head. And it's all true. The lighting inside Bellevue's rooftop restaurant was soft gold, casting elegant shadows across glass tables and candlelight. Conversations danced through the air like violins in a chamber hall. At the entrance, Malik Carter stepped in quietly. He wore a pressed gray shirt, slacks, and shoes that had seen years of careful polishing. No jewelry, no entourage, just a man with calm eyes and a quiet presence. Vanessa Cole, the manager, spotted him immediately. Her eyes narrowed. She clicked toward him in heels too loud for her confidence. "You're late," she snapped, already turning her back. "Station 5 needs water. Chop, chop." Malik blinked, but said nothing. The restaurant staff, dressed in matching black and silver uniforms, bustled around him. No one questioned Vanessa. She was known for her icy standards and her temper. Malik glanced at the gleaming trays on the prep counter, then silently picked up a water carafe and walked toward the designated table. At table 5, 3 guests in suits were chuckling over oysters. One glanced at Malik and said, "Finally." They barely looked at him as he poured. From across the room, Vanessa folded her arms, satisfied. "At least he listens," she muttered to a nearby hostess, who gave a nervous smile. Malik returned to the counter, replaced the carafe, and calmly asked, "May I speak with the manager?" Vanessa approached, her expression tightening. "Is there a problem?" she said, voice saccharine. "I have a reservation," Malik said evenly. "Under Carter," she scoffed. "Sir, this area is reserved for members and their guests. If you're not serving tonight, you'll need to wait for your shift leader." "I'm not on staff," Malik replied. The surrounding noise dimmed. A few heads turned, sensing tension. A waiter paused mid-step. Malik stood tall, his posture polite but unwavering. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you in uniform?" She looked him up and down with a hint of contempt. "Oh wait, you're not even in uniform, just underdressed." Malik's voice didn't rise. "I'm here for the investors' dinner." Vanessa's lips curled. "That's upstairs, private, by invite only." "I was invited." She rolled her eyes. "That's cute." "Let me guess. You left your golden ticket at home?" Malik reached into his jacket pocket, but paused. Instead of presenting the card, he looked around the room, watching, measuring. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Security will escort you out if you don't leave now." Malik smiled faintly. "If that's necessary." No threats, no argument, just stillness. The hostess beside Vanessa whispered, "What if he really is?" but was quickly shushed. Outside the window, city lights sparkled against the dusk. Inside, a quiet storm began to brew, and no one yet knew that the man they'd mistaken for a waiter had more power than everyone in that room combined. Vanessa stepped forward with a clipped, confident stride, lips tight, tone sharper now. "You've already disrupted service enough," she said, gesturing toward the entrance. "This restaurant has standards, sir. We can't just let anyone stroll in claiming a seat." Malik remained composed. He slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick black envelope embossed with gold trim. Without a word, he held it out. Vanessa gave it the briefest glance and scoffed. "Seriously? People really go through this much effort for a prank?" She waved at a nearby server. "Trent, call security. Tell them we have someone impersonating an investor." Trent hesitated. He was young, maybe 25, with wide eyes and nervous hands. But when he looked at Malik's face, his expression shifted, from obligation to recognition. His mouth opened slightly. "Wait, I think I've seen..." Vanessa cut in sharply, eyes cold. You think you've seen a lot of things. That's not your job. Call security, now. Trent flinched. Yes, ma'am, he said, retreating quickly toward the host stand. But his glance lingered on Malik with silent conflict. Guests began to murmur, sensing something was off. One woman leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Isn't that the guy from the Forbes cover last year?" Her husband shrugged. "Can't be. Why would he be here dressed like that?" Malik tucked the envelope back into his jacket with precision, not defeated, not defiant, simply patient. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Let me make this clear," she said, voice loud enough to cut through the surrounding clinks of cutlery. "This is a private investor event, high net worth only. No tourists, no walk-ins, no exceptions." A few heads turned at her phrasing. Some diners exchanged glances. The energy in the room had shifted, from curious to unsettled. "I understand," Malik said calmly. "May I ask you one last time to look at the invitation?" Vanessa exhaled dramatically. "Sir, do I look like I have time to entertain delusions tonight? My job is to protect the integrity of this restaurant." At that moment, the elevator dinged. A man in a navy suit stepped out and glanced around before walking purposefully toward the bar. Malik didn't move. His eyes followed, but his face revealed nothing. Vanessa, emboldened by the inaction around her, turned to two security guards who had just arrived. "Please remove this man from the premises." As they approached, Trent lingered nearby, watching everything with a tense jaw. He wasn't just unsure anymore. He was afraid Vanessa had made a mistake she wouldn't be able to undo. Vanessa pulled out her phone with theatrical irritation. She walked several steps away, just enough to ensure everyone nearby could hear. "Yeah, I need to report a situation," she began, her voice sharp. "Some man walked in claiming to be invited to the investor dinner. He's not on the reservation list, and he's creating a disturbance." Malik stood quietly as the security guards hovered at a distance, unsure. One shifted his weight from foot to foot, glancing toward the front desk, clearly waiting for a clearer directive. Across the room, near the window, a man in a dark navy suit slowly stood from his table. He had silver at his temples, a deliberate way of folding his napkin, and an air of patience honed by decades of boardroom politics. He watched Malik for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word to his companions, he pulled out his own phone and stepped away. "Get him out of here before the real investors arrive," Vanessa continued on the call, her voice rising slightly. "He could be a security threat, or worse, press." Trent, still behind the host stand, winced. The man in the navy suit turned his back to the dining room and pressed a number into his phone with calm precision. The call connected almost instantly. "It's me," he said. "I think we have a problem." On the other end, a voice responded quickly, low and focused. "He's here," the man said. "Malik Carter. Yes, that Malik Carter. I don't think she recognized him. No, she didn't even look at the card. She's about to make it very public." There was a pause. "Understood," the man said, then ended the call and walked briskly toward the service hallway. Back at the table, Malik's presence now drew more attention. More guests had begun whispering. Some turned fully in their seats, trying to glimpse what was unfolding. A woman near the bar whispered, "He looks so familiar." "He's too calm," her friend replied. "That's not the energy of someone faking it." Vanessa returned, pocketing her phone, posture victorious. "Security now." As the guards took a cautious step forward, Malik finally spoke again, voice steady. "I'd recommend waiting just a moment longer." Vanessa sneered. "And why's that?" From the side entrance, the man in the navy suit reappeared, but this time with someone behind him. A younger man in a headset followed, whispering rapidly. Vanessa's smile wavered. Twist was coming, and the room knew it. But they didn't know just how high the stakes were about to climb, or that the man she just tried to eject was not just any guest, but one of the people who built the very empire she claimed to protect. As Vanessa stepped closer, Malik reached into his jacket pocket with the same calm he'd maintained since walking in. He pulled out a sleek, matte black card, heavier than plastic, glinting with a soft gold trim. At the center, his name was engraved. Malik Carter, founding partner, Sovereign Holdings. He held it out, palm open, eyes steady. Would you care to verify this before escalating things further? Vanessa looked at the card and laughed, loud, dismissive, enough to draw glances. Seriously? You're still playing this game? She waved the card away. These knockoffs are everywhere. I've seen them sold on eBay for $50. Trent, still standing nearby, visibly winced. One of the security guards shifted uncomfortably. The tension in the room thickened. At table 6, near the wine display, a man in a burgundy suit slowly stood. He was older, maybe in his late 60s, with a quiet gravitas and a face familiar to anyone who followed business news. His name, Gerald Whitmore, a renowned venture capitalist, board advisor, and longtime investor in Sovereign Holdings. He looked straight at Malik. Is that really you? Gerald's voice cut clean through the murmurs. Malik turned his head slightly and nodded once. The older man's face softened. I'll be damned. Malik Carter, you saved this company when no one else would. He turned toward the room. He's not just an investor, folks. He's the one who kept this entire chain from folding during the 2020 crash. Silence fell like a curtain. Even Vanessa froze. Gerald stepped closer, inspecting the card Malik still held. I've seen this once before, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. These cards are real, and they're only given to the 5 founding partners, each one personally engraved. Vanessa's face drained of color. I think, Gerald added, you owe this man an apology. For the first time, Vanessa stammered, I didn't recognize him. His name wasn't on the guest list. Gerald raised an eyebrow. Did you read it, or did you just assume? Behind Vanessa, Trent looked down, swallowing hard. More guests had risen from their seats now, whispering furiously. Someone began filming. Another whispered, that's why he looked familiar. He's on the board of Silver Coast too. Vanessa backed up a step. I didn't know. Malik finally put the card away, still silent. His calm presence now felt weighty, not passive, as if he had waited for exactly this moment to speak truth through silence. The room wasn't hostile anymore. It was watching, waiting, and Vanessa was beginning to realize that her next move wouldn't just affect her shift. It might end her career. Vanessa's face was pale, but her pride refused to yield. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone again and tapped the screen with forced confidence. If everyone's so sure, she said, loud enough for the entire room to hear, let's clarify this once and for all. She jabbed the call button labeled Mr. Keller, CEO, and turned on speakerphone before holding it in front of her like a badge of authority. We'll see what the top says, she muttered. The phone rang twice, then clicked. Keller, came a brisk voice, firm and direct. Sir, Vanessa began, tone shifting to professional urgency. We have a situation at the Lakeshore location. A man claiming to be an investor is disrupting the private dinner. He's not on the guest list. I've tried to remove him, but now a few guests are backing him up. There was a pause on the line, long enough for the silence in the restaurant to feel like thunder. Then Keller's voice came back, sharp, incredulous, and booming through the phone speaker. Wait, who are you talking about? He says his name is Malik Carter, Vanessa replied, folding her arms, trying to stand taller. He claims he's a founding partner. Another beat of silence. Then the explosion came. You're telling me you're trying to eject Malik Carter? Every head turned. Malik Carter built this company. That restaurant you're standing in wouldn't exist if he hadn't bailed us out 5 years ago. He's not just a founding partner, he's the goddamn spine of our investment wing. Gasps rippled through the dining hall. Phones were raised without shame now. No one was eating. Even the band had gone quiet. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. He didn't look like it. Like what, Vanessa? Like someone worthy of respect? Keller's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. You had one job tonight, to ensure our VIP guests were treated with dignity. Instead, you insulted the most important person on the list. She looked to Trent, to security, to anyone, but no one met her eyes. She tried. I didn't mean... You're on speaker, right? Keller snapped. Yes, sir. Good. Then everyone can hear me say this. Malik Carter is to be treated with full honors. You, Vanessa, are to be relieved of your duties immediately. Hand over your badge and leave the floor. We'll deal with the rest at corporate. Silence again, then whispers and eyes, hundreds of them, watching her unravel in real time. Vanessa lowered her phone slowly, her hands shaking, her breath hitched, but the voice of authority had spoken, and the echo of it was already carving her name into a cautionary tale. As the weight of Keller's words settled across the restaurant like fog, Malik remained still, his expression unreadable. Around him, whispers tangled with shame. Vanessa stood frozen, but Malik's eyes weren't on her. They were somewhere else entirely. His gaze drifted toward the polished tile floor, then to the hallway behind the kitchen. The clink of silverware, the chatter, all faded. For a moment, the room disappeared, swallowed by memory. Years ago, this same restaurant had different walls, but the same cold rules. Malik had been 19, fresh from trade school, working night shifts, scrubbing dishes and mopping floors. He remembered the back hallway with its flickering light, the smell of burnt oil near the fryer, the sting in his fingers from cheap detergent. He remembered the night it happened. A Friday evening, just after closing. He had stepped into the dining area to retrieve a forgotten tray. One of the junior servers spotted him and whispered something to the shift manager. Within minutes, Malik had been pulled aside and accused of lingering where he didn't belong. The official report said he'd breached protocol, that he made a guest uncomfortable. No proof, no explanation. Just a signature at the bottom of a dismissal form. That signature haunted him. It wasn't until years later, during the early days of his first tech investment, that he saw the name again, printed at the bottom of an old HR file during a restaurant group acquisition audit. Vanessa Cole. The memory snapped back into place like a key in a lock. And now here they were again. Same place, same arrogance. Only this time, the balance of power had shifted. Malik's eyes returned to the present, to Vanessa. Her face was pale, eyes wide. Maybe she remembered him now too, not as a powerful man, but as the kid in the back room with water on his sleeves and dignity leaking down the drain. He didn't need to say anything. His silence was its own reckoning. Nearby, Trent stood frozen, his expression tense with realization. You worked here before? He finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. Malik gave a soft, almost imperceptible nod. Vanessa looked like she might collapse. I didn't know, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. That was years ago. I was just following policy. But the words sounded hollow, even to her. In the crowd, someone murmured, it always comes back around. And now it had. Because history wasn't just repeating, it was correcting itself. And Malik, once erased in silence, was now being written back in bold. Vanessa's badge trembled in her hand. Keller's voice had long gone silent, but the command still echoed in every corner of the restaurant. Her once perfect posture sagged under the invisible weight of consequence. She looked around, searching for sympathy, for a lifeline, but none came. Trent stepped back. The security guards, now more certain, moved closer. One extended his hand toward the badge. You heard him, the taller one said gently but firmly. Please hand it over. Vanessa stared at the metal emblem in her palm, the symbol of her authority, her pride, her illusion of invincibility. Slowly, reluctantly, she placed it in the guard's hand. The room didn't cheer, but the air felt charged, vindicated. A woman in a red cocktail dress leaned toward her husband. Finally, she whispered. She's been a menace for years. At table 9, a younger manager from another branch muttered under his breath, "That's what happens when you think you're untouchable." But just as Vanessa turned to leave, her colleague Olivia, assistant operations manager, leaned toward another server and whispered something that cut through the atmosphere like a knife. "She's not done yet," Olivia murmured. "You know who her father is, right?" The server raised an eyebrow. "She's Robert Cole's daughter." The name sparked immediate tension. Robert Cole, major shareholder, co-founder of the expansion committee, and known for pulling strings when necessary. The server glanced at Vanessa's retreating back. "So, this isn't over?" "Depends," Olivia replied, voice low. "If Daddy shows up, they might sweep it under the rug." Whispers spread again, but this time laced with cynicism. A few guests exchanged knowing looks, their satisfaction deflating into wary suspicion. Malik caught the shift. He didn't react, but he heard it, the doubt creeping in, the ancient question returning. Will justice stick, or will power win again? Vanessa, now halfway to the entrance, paused. Her spine straightened slightly. She had heard the murmurs too. Her face changed. Not humble, not ashamed, defiant. For a moment, it was as if she believed she'd walk back in tomorrow morning like nothing had happened. Malik watched her with calm detachment. He had seen this before, the last gasp of ego before reality fully landed. As she reached the door, Gerald Whitmore stood and stepped into her path. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "don't." She froze. "You were given a chance to lead with fairness. You chose arrogance. Don't let legacy become an excuse for cruelty." Her lips parted, but she said nothing, just pushed past, disappearing into the hallway. The applause didn't come this time. Only silence. Because even though justice had spoken, the shadow of influence still lingered, and no one knew for sure if the fall was real or temporary. The restaurant hadn't resumed its rhythm. Instead of returning to their meals, guests remained seated in silence, watching the now empty hallway where Vanessa had exited. Her departure had left a vacuum, but not all were satisfied with the outcome. Near the wine bar, a man in a pale linen suit leaned toward his companion. "That was harsh," he murmured. "Maybe she made a mistake, but firing her in front of everyone? Public humiliation isn't justice." Across the room, another woman countered, "She humiliated someone first. She thought he was beneath her. That's not a mistake. That's who she is." From a corner table, an elderly couple stood and slowly began to gather their things. "I don't like the energy in here anymore," the husband said. "Too much drama. We came for dinner, not a corporate morality play." Their exit was slow, but intentional, enough for others to notice. A ripple of discomfort spread among some guests. A few eyes turned to Malik, who had returned to standing near the host station, arms calmly at his sides. He made no move to leave, no gestures of gloating or dominance. Trent approached cautiously. "Mr. Carter, are you all right?" Malik looked at him with a small, appreciative smile. "I've been through worse." He stepped forward, raising his voice just enough to carry across the main floor, but keeping his tone warm, composed. "I want to thank everyone for your patience tonight. What happened was unfortunate, but I don't want this evening remembered for conflict." Heads turned. Conversations halted. Malik continued, "I didn't come here to make a scene. I came to support a business I've believed in for years. I won't let one person's mistake define that." The sincerity in his voice landed like a bomb. Some of the tension in the room eased. A man near the bar spoke up. "You handled this with more grace than most would." Another chimed in. "You could have had her walked out in cuffs, and no one would have blamed you." Malik shook his head. "That's not leadership. That's vengeance." A quiet pause followed, deeper than before, one filled with reflection instead of rage. Then, from the back, a younger woman stood, clutching a notepad. She was a trainee, clearly not part of the regular staff. Her voice trembled slightly. "Mr. Carter, thank you. People like me, we see what just happened, and it means something." Malik nodded, eyes kind. From the entrance, a new energy arrived. A group of guests entered, late arrivals to the investor dinner. Their arrival, coupled with Malik's words, seemed to shift the balance. Guests returned to their tables. Conversation softened. Music resumed. The rebellion had paused. But whether it would return, or whether this was the start of redemption, remained uncertain. Just as the atmosphere began to settle, the front doors of the restaurant parted again. This time, the hush wasn't about discomfort. It was anticipation. Guests turned, instinctively sensing someone important had arrived. A tall, broad-shouldered man entered, flanked by two assistants. His silver cufflinks gleamed under the ambient light, and his gait carried the kind of confidence that only decades of boardroom dominance could afford. Robert Cole, founder, investor, majority shareholder, and Vanessa's father. The whispers ignited instantly. "That's her dad. He's really here. He's going to fix this for her." Vanessa, who had not yet fully left the premises, turned around the moment she saw him. Her face lit up. The confidence, the entitlement she had worn all evening flickered back like a pilot light reigniting. She took a few steps toward him. "Dad!" Robert raised a hand, not in greeting, but in halt. The room quieted as fast as it had begun to buzz. His gaze swept the space, taking in the guests, the staff, the guards, and finally, Malik. Their eyes met. Robert gave a slight nod, respectful, measured. Then he turned to his daughter. "Vanessa," he said, voice like polished marble, "you are no longer welcome here." A sharp collective inhale rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's face contorted in disbelief. "What?" "You heard me," he replied, his tone unforgiving. "You've embarrassed this company, this brand, and more importantly, you've embarrassed yourself." "But I didn't know it was him," she stammered, cheeks flushing red. "You always told me to protect the image, to keep standards." "I told you to uphold integrity," he snapped, "not weaponize it." She looked around, desperate now. "You're choosing him over me?" Robert didn't flinch. "I'm choosing what's right. Something you clearly forgot the moment you put on that badge." The room held its breath. "In addition to your termination," he continued, "you will be removed from the family's executive voting trust, effective immediately." Vanessa gasped. "You can't." "I already have." He turned to his assistant. "File the removal paperwork tonight." Silence reigned. Malik remained quiet, observing. No smirk, no gloat, only understanding. Robert turned back to Malik and with a solemn nod said, "Thank you for showing restraint, more than many of us might have." Vanessa's shoulders slumped. Her world, one she believed untouchable, was crumbling not at the hands of enemies, but her own blood. She tried one last time. "Dad, please." "Go home," Robert said, his voice final, "and think about who you became." And just like that, the redemption she'd hoped for turned to rebellion against her. But no one rose to follow. She left alone. Not 5 minutes after Vanessa disappeared, the elevator at the back of the restaurant chimed again. The doors opened, revealing 3 sharply dressed individuals with briefcases, their expressions purposeful and focused. A wave of murmurs followed their entrance. "They're not guests. Are those legal?" Indeed, they were. One of the assistants accompanying Robert Cole stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. On behalf of Sovereign Holdings, I'd like to introduce a special delegation from our Corporate Governance and Compliance Division." Guests glanced at each other with curiosity and unease. Even the staff stiffened, instinctively sensing this night wasn't finished shifting under their feet. Then, over the restaurant's sound system, the CEO's voice, Keller, came through crystal clear, patched in remotely from headquarters. "I understand tonight has been intense," he began, "but let me be absolutely transparent. This moment marks a turning point for our organization." People leaned in. "In the next 72 hours, Our internal task force will launch a full review of hiring practices, employee training, and guest experience standards across all properties. Starting here. Several managers paled. We will re-interview staff, review footage, reconstruct communication logs, and where we find prejudice, overt or systemic, we will remove it. No exceptions. The room was completely silent. Twist 7 dropped not with fanfare, but with weight. Many of you don't know this, Keller continued. But 6 months ago, we initiated a covert audit of our hospitality culture. A mystery guest was selected to move quietly through our branches, observing, documenting, experiencing what any customer would. He paused. That guest was Mr. Malik Carter. Gasps erupted. Even those who had been skeptical now turned to Malik with fresh awe. Not as a board member, not as an owner, but as a man who once stood behind the sinks in our kitchens, who walked these floors in silence, and who gave us one last chance to get it right. Malik remained still, gaze calm. But for those watching closely, there was something new in his eyes. A flicker of grief, perhaps. Or of memory. Keller's voice softened. Malik didn't want power. He wanted perspective. And now, thanks to him, we have both. The lead attorney stepped forward and handed the general manager a sealed folder. Here are the audit's preliminary findings, she said. You'll want to read it carefully. No one moved. The weight of accountability was now everywhere, not as punishment, but as demand for better. Malik finally spoke, his voice low but clear. This was never about revenge. It was about truth, and truth doesn't knock. It walks in and waits to see who panics. Several staff members bowed their heads. Others straightened, ready to change. Tonight was no longer just a scandal. It was the start of a reckoning. As the buzz upstairs carried on with shifting conversations and shaken confidence, Malik quietly excused himself from the dining room. He made his way past the kitchen, where the hum of ventilation mixed with the clatter of utensils, and down the narrow hallway to a door labeled Staff Lounge. The air inside was cooler, quieter. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly. The worn couch sagged in the middle, and the scent of disinfectant clung faintly to the walls. But to Malik, it felt oddly like home. Years ago, this was where he'd taken his 10-minute breaks. Sometimes, when his shift ended late and buses stopped running, he'd curl up on that very couch with a coat draped over him, pretending it was enough. It never was. He stood in the center of the room for a moment, letting the memory settle. Then, a soft voice behind him. Mr. Carter? He turned. A woman in her 50s, gray streaks in her ponytail, stood near the door. Her name tag read Inez. Her hand trembled as she approached, and then, with no warning, she threw her arms around him and sobbed. I knew it, she whispered. I knew you'd become something. I used to sneak you coffee on those long nights, remember? Malik held her gently. I remember everything, he said softly. A few other staff trickled in, eyes wide with emotion. One man nodded respectfully. Another patted his chest as if to say thank you without speaking. Then a young server stepped forward, maybe 20 at most. His posture was unsure, but his eyes were sharp, focused. He looked at Malik not with awe, but understanding. Malik smiled. You've been watching closely, haven't you? The young man hesitated, then nodded. Twist 8 unfolded with quiet grace. This is Caleb, Inez said, wiping her tears. New hire, works double shifts, quiet, smart. Malik nodded again. He's also my cousin. Gasps, soft but stunned, moved through the small group. I asked him to apply here 3 months ago, Malik explained. Told him not to tell anyone. Just observe, learn, report. Caleb stepped forward, pulling a small notebook from his apron. Every missed protocol, every moment of kindness, every time someone judged a guest too quickly, I wrote it down. Malik took the notebook, flipping through it briefly. His face didn't change, but his fingers lingered on certain pages. "You did well," he said. "Better than I expected." Inez looked from Caleb to Malik, her mouth trembling. "You planned all this?" Malik gave a faint smile. "No, I hoped I wouldn't have to." They gathered around a small staff table. Someone pulled out paper cups. Caleb poured water into each. Malik raised his. "To respect, even when no one's watching." The others echoed him, and for a moment, in the quiet belly of a building built on ambition, the people who had always been overlooked toasted a man who never forgot where he came from. The restaurant lights had dimmed slightly as the final course was cleared. Conversations were hushed, not from awkwardness, but reverence. Something had shifted in the room, the kind of quiet that arrives only after truth has walked through and rearranged the furniture. Malik returned from the staff lounge, composed as ever. He didn't take the center of the floor, didn't demand attention, yet all eyes followed him. Someone tapped a wine glass with a spoon, signaling the room's desire to hear from the man who had turned their assumptions upside down. There was no microphone. None was needed. Malik stood near the grand piano, hands loosely clasped, gaze sweeping across the crowd. "I don't have much to say," he began, voice low but resonant. "And I don't plan to say it loudly, because sometimes truth doesn't need volume." People leaned in. "I came here tonight not as a board member, not as a founding partner, and certainly not as someone demanding recognition. I came to see if the values we preach are the ones we live." He paused. "Tonight proved we still have work to do." The room held its breath. "I don't care where someone went to school, what they drive, who they know. I care how they treat the person serving them coffee, the person cleaning their table, the stranger who walks in without warning." He glanced at Caleb, who stood near the back, notebook still in his hand. "If you want to know someone's worth," Malik said, "watch how they treat those they think they don't need." Murmurs of agreement swept the room. Gerald Whitmore stood quietly, then sat again. No words, just respect. Malik continued, "I don't need applause. I don't need titles. What I need, what we all need, is a culture where respect isn't earned by appearance, but given by default." A pause. "Because you never know who you're speaking to, and you never know what they've survived." The silence that followed was heavy, not with shame, but reflection. Then came the applause. It started with one pair of hands, then another, then dozens more. It wasn't thunderous, it was steady, honest. A standing ovation not for a man who demanded it, but for one who never asked. Journalists who had arrived midway were already typing, headlines forming. The quiet power of Malik Carter, the man who let respect speak first. But Malik didn't wait for interviews or spotlights. He stepped away from the center, nodded to Trent, shook hands with the security team, and walked quietly toward the exit. As he passed the Hostess stand, he left something behind. His black card, now signed on the back. A reminder, a message. By the time the door closed behind him, the restaurant felt different, softer, wiser. Because Malik Carter didn't leave behind a speech or a scandal. He left behind a standard.